Of course, don't go into debt to do it. But
most people go into debt to do it, Tom Storey. Most people put
I'm not saying most people. I'm talking to you right now. Go have a fun vacation and don't worry about it for once. Your mortgage will still be there to be paid off when you get home.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
We are ready. We are trying to figure this out because you chose to go on vacation. So,
well, just let me know if the Wi-Fi makes this terrible. But either way, we'll just keep talking through it. Okay, we good to start?
Do it, Tom Storey.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. This is your weekly real estate roundup podcast that comes out every single Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 a.m. for the early risers on the West Coast for my PST listeners. I appreciate you being here. I hope everyone is having a wonderful summer so far. Steve, are you taking time off at all, or are you just working through the summer?
This is my last thing to do before we take some time off here. But it has been crazy. Like, this is probably the busiest summer I can remember on record.
Which is odd because of the rate hikes, but I'm sure we'll get into that today. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, I want to say thank you. I think the podcast channel, Steve, is 2250 subscribers now.
Somewhere in there,
almost getting close to 2,500 is the next goal. So if you've been showing up weekly and enjoying these conversations, we'd appreciate if you hit that subscribe button and like this video if you just learned anything new at all. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, well, I hope you're having a great day. If you haven't already, make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Steve, we got no guest this week. What happened? No one would say yes?
No,
people have given up on us?
Everybody caught on and they're like, screw these guys. No, I want to hang out with my new freshly 32-year-old friend, Tom Storey. Now that, I thought now that you hit 10,000 subscribers on your main channel that you would be the guest on your own podcast. So, because you're a big time.
Interesting. I want to know how you actually feel about that, because we've had a race to 10,000 and I was beating you and then you crushed me for a while. And then I had, frankly, a video that luckily took off and really helped.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling miserable? Is there no purpose in life anymore?
A last ditch effort, full clickbait video that I knew would go clickbait, and it went, and it was rocking, but I just couldn't do it. Your association with the BAM guys is getting you all that American attention now. I'm going to put it there. And
it's true.
Congratulations, Tom Storey. I concede. And I don't know what else to do.
This was just the first thing you're trying to do to get to 10,000. Like you'll be there in probably a week anyways, right? So now what's the next goal? What's publicly the next goal for the main channels? 15, 20?
I think 10's all I ever thought. That was it. So just keep plugging along, trying to help people with their real estate and stuff. And that's the focus, right? To meet clients on there. And this is actually turning out to be, for me, a lot more fun than that side of things. I think we're even starting to get on average more views here than we are on the main channel. So I don't know. I like it.
Yeah. I was thinking about that actually the other day. For the main channel videos, they kind of feel, it stresses me out thinking like, when am I going to post the next one? What am I going to talk about? And, I have a list of ideas and things I want to talk about, but then there's a lot of time involved in sitting down, recording them, editing them, scheduling them to go out, where these podcast episodes, I'm like excited about. Yeah. I'm excited to come talk to you or the guest or whatever we're doing. And I don't know, this is a platform that I think we can really, really grow. And it could actually be cool depending on what happens with this. If this podcast just blows by both of our main channels anyways, if we stay consistent with this, I think it could happen. If you look at the growth in the last year of this, has this not grown on par with our main channels in terms of subscribers? Probably. If not, slightly below, maybe?
I don't know. I'd have to look at. No, I think the main channel's still growing faster. It's just I can't believe that the average person listens to this for 30 minutes on YouTube. Like, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, no, it's going good. It's going good, man.
They're probably putting their screen on dark mode so they don't have to look at us and they're just listening. Or all my YouTube premium subscribers, you know what the good life is like. You can just turn your phone off and you're good to go. Steve's listening to ads.
No, I'm not listening to ads. Listen, this is what you do. I'm going to tell all you people, you don't watch it on the YouTube app. Okay. This is for secret, super stealth, cheat people. You don't watch it on the YouTube app. You watch it on your browser on Safari. Then you go full screen. Okay. Then you click the screen off. The whole thing stops. Your audio stops. And then on your home screen, you press play again. Your audio goes. No ads, no nothing. It's YouTube Premium free.
All right, Steven, we're boring the people. Let's get to the good stuff here. Enough of the chit chat. Let's get into the fun stuff. I just want to give everyone, by the way, a heads up on what's coming out next week.
Oh, yeah.
Not to get too excited about it, but we've had a lot of discussions in the comments of people very much saying, like, guys, if you make bidding on homes open and everyone can see everybody else's offers, it's going to help from people overpaying for properties. And our pushback's kind of been like, I think it's going to be great for transparency. I don't know if it's going to solve anything to do with affordability. And we actually got a real answer on this from someone that's involved in one of these companies, and they're coming on next week. So, Steve, you want to give us a little tease of what next week's going to be all about?
Yeah, we are giving the people what they want and exploring an open auction style platform, of which I actually think is the future, whether I like it or not. And I actually do like this platform, but this is where we are headed. And I don't think people are going to like it eventually. Actually, you had a really good comment because we have just pre-recorded that. It is in the bag, as they say. And you had a comment like near the end, like, how long until this becomes the enemy? And it's because of the results that they're getting with the whole auction system. And what I liked about the auction system there is the ability or the twist that they put on the auction system, and the ability for buyers to still secure properties even in an auction. Anyway, it's really good stuff. It's really interesting. I wish we could have done another hour because I have so many more questions about the system.
I think it's going to be huge. It's coming to Canada.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily this platform, but something like it's coming, and this one's probably on the way as an alternative.
Yeah.
And it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be great. I think it's as a real estate agent, it's going to be a great tool to use if that's the way the sellers want to do the process. And I think, not to give away too much, but I think sellers may actually want open bidding to be a thing based on the results that we heard of next week.
Yeah.
So definitely interesting.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get into this, Tom, because I have two stories I want to share with you today. And I know people like the storytelling aspect of this, like what's really going on out there in the market. And I have one, a financial story, and one, a real estate story, very Canadian real estate, very kind of general broad topic. So should we give the people what they want first and go real estate story?
Let's start with the real estate story, because then I want to share some thoughts on what I'm seeing in the market right now as we're into the summer. Let's start there.
Cool. So on my birthday, one of my team members was like, "You look like you need to take a load off." So we're going and getting our feet done.
A pedicure.
And I was like, I don't know, I got lots of work to do. And they looked.
Have you ever done that before?
I have done it a couple of times. I did it once with my wife.
I have not.
No,
I'm interested though. I'm not against it.
It's better than you think. So we were, it was just like, hey, you know what? It's your birthday. You're working hard. Let's, instead of going on the lunch hour or whatever, let's just go down. I've got an appointment. I'll get him an extra chair. Let's go do it. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it.
Just Steve, for a sec before
you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
You said this was a real estate story, but all I've heard so far is Steve's stressed out and he needs to get his feet done. Where's this going?
That's a real estate story. So we walk downstairs in the mini mall of my office there, and we meet. We go in and we do the whole thing. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you sit back in a nice massage chair and you get, your a foot rub and the whole thing. So it's fantastic, right? I'm a big fan. So as any small talk goes on, what are you guys on lunch break? What are you doing? Right. So we start talking about being real estate agents. And obviously that's where things start to turn. Not turn. Everybody wants to talk about real estate. So we are talking to the employees there that are, now everybody's kind of getting involved, right? There's not just us and the people giving us our like foot massages and pedicures and whatever, but there's like the people doing the nails over on the other side. Everybody starts to get involved. And then the lady starts telling us, now my assumption is she is the owner, but she's also a worker there, right? But she sounds like she's the one in charge. I didn't really ask that question. And she was telling us how she just bought a detached house. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, yeah, I just moved in like 2 weeks ago. I was like, oh, cool. So, where'd you come from? She's like, well, I own a townhouse. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Who we were thinking like, who did you use to sell it? That sort of thing. She's like, oh, no, I kept it. So she kept the townhouse and she moved into the detached house. And she's, now she's got a rental. So she's a business owner. I'm assuming I got the feeling she was the owner. So she's now got a rental townhouse, moved into a detached home. Business seems to be going well. I mean, the place is pretty packed and, it's all going good. But she is obviously not originally born in Canada, right? Thick accent. So we're talking to her, and she's telling us her story coming to Canada and getting into real estate, which I was like, let's buckle up here. Let's do this. So here's how it went. She came to, or she was accepted under the provincial nomination program, my understanding, in PEI.
Okay.
So when you get, there's the national, program, and then each province has like to try and bring workers into their province and stuff. They get so many people, whatever. That's how they get accepted. So she went from Vietnam to PEI. And she was telling me how all of these people in her, some of her employees or a bunch of her friends, they're mostly Chinese and Vietnamese. I was like, okay, cool. So they're getting placed in Saskatchewan. She says most of her friends are getting placed in Saskatchewan. Many of them in Manitoba. She got placed in PEI, and that's what she accepted in order to come to Canada.
How long ago was that?
Years.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume it sounded like kind of 5 years ago, probably just pre-puberty.
Okay. Oh, so not like 20 years ago. 5 years ago.
Sounds like within the last decade. I didn't ask her specifically, but then so this is why it got interesting. She says that, so that's what many people are doing, except if you're coming from those cities, and she started mentioning, big cities in Vietnam and China and all those areas, and they place you in Charlottetown, maybe not necessarily going to go so well, right? So what she says is, I think she said it took 2 years. I think she said she did 2 years, like it's a prison sentence, right? Did 2 years in PEI. But here's the deal. As soon as the PR comes, there's no more tie. You don't have to be in PEI anymore. Don't have to be in Saskatchewan anymore. Don't have to be. So she's like, as soon as that comes, it's Vancouver. Here I come.
As quick as you possibly can get to where you actually want to be.
You could possibly do it. So here's where the story goes, though, into real estate. She says to me, what you guys should do, because this is where so many people are getting their business, is real estate agents from Toronto and Vancouver are going into Saskatoon, into these communities, into rural parts of Manitoba. And for those new Canadians, they're putting on seminars.
That's actually very smart.
How to buy. And she's like, you guys need to do this. Like literally the Asian community in Moose Jaw is getting pulled together, and agents are coming. Say, for instance, she said if you went to Manitoba, you were more likely to go to Toronto. If you went to Saskatchewan, you were more likely to go to BC.
Now, is this still how it works with immigration, that you have to go to a certain area, or is it now just,
I think
we want so many people to come here that you can go anywhere?
I think it's easy for certain people to go to certain spots, but my understanding is like a provincial nomination might be easier for some people versus others. So there's, again, that's a provincial entry program as opposed to the federal plan. So anyway, she's telling me about these seminars, and these agents are coming in and they're showing them like, hey, this is what it's going to take to buy a property in Toronto. This is what it's going to take to buy a property in Vancouver. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is all, but I'm like, you can't really just like buy a property in Vancouver. Like, don't you know how expensive it is here?
Yeah, you need a lot of money.
You need a lot of money. And then that's when she turned to me and she said, this episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by doormat.ca. Doormat.ca is Ontario's real estate lawyer. It's an online real estate law service that brings you from purchase agreement all the way through your closing. Doormat brings transparency, simplicity, and everything else good from the internet into the real estate transaction and your real estate law industry that typically feels like a black box that continuously just breeds anxiety and stress.
For real estate agents licensed in Ontario, I've got a question for you. Are you tired of hearing about the property closing become official from your clients? That shouldn't be the case. You should be hearing it from the lawyer. If you sign up for Doormat Partners, you will get real-time updates on the progress of your client's transaction, and you will also unlock a $100 discount for the doormat fee for your clients. So if you're looking for insight for your client's property closing, sign up for Doormat's partner program and get real-time updates throughout the process. As a Doormat partner, you'll get emails and texts to keep you up to date on the progress of your clients. If you're buying or selling a property, or you're a real estate agent servicing Ontario, Canada, reach out to Doormat today and let them know you found them from the Tom Storey Show. And now, back to the show.
And that's when she turned to me and she said, listen, if you're coming from my country of Vietnam, do you think the poor people are immigrating here? The poor people can't get here. She's like, the people that are working, like, they can't afford a plane ticket out of the country. They're not getting here. She's like, these are all the rich people that are coming. And not necessarily rich, but like, let's go upper middle class or higher, right? So she's like, they're coming in with tons of money. Now, she did mention that, you know, getting money out of China is extremely difficult. Go ahead.
See, just to push back a little bit on this, because, you know, I don't think everyone that immigrates to Canada has bags of money. I think some of them do, but not all of them.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And there's even been some stories in Toronto where they interviewed kind of like all these Uber Eats delivery people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were recently immigrated from India and other countries. And now, again, keep in mind, this is trying to push the other direction and sensationalizing it to say how bad Toronto is. But their response was basically like, we've been lied to. There's not really great opportunity here. This is the only job that made sense right now. This is not what we thought. So, and I don't think they've got bags of money, right? So now they were probably the younger generation. I'm not sure how old she was when she moved here and maybe had a little bit more money, but you know, I think immigration is obviously a massive part of our housing prices, but it's also a part of the rental prices.
Now, I wouldn't say this particular lady is a rich lady. I mean, she's sitting there doing nail salon services for people. So I'm sure she's the business owner, right? So, but what she's basically saying is like people coming here. For instance, she said, I went to PEI. I did my time there, let's call it. And she's like, listen, if you come from a big city in Asia, the second you are given the opportunity, you are not moving to Edmonton. You're going to Vancouver or Toronto. And she's like, not only that, we have the ability to purchase property. You're not going to buy all cash. You're not doing any of that stuff. But once you've been here for 3-4 years, you get your PR, you've filed taxes in Canada, you have enough for 20% down or more, and you get into a property. And that is the goal.
Did you ask her why she moved here?
I did not ask her. I asked her why she moved to Vancouver.
Okay.
I did not ask her why she left Vietnam. That would have been a smart question.
That would be interesting. You know what we should do? We should have someone on in the future who's just going through the immigration process and wants to come to Canada and find out like what exactly is it that they believe is the reasons why they're trying to come here. And maybe it's not even that Canada is so great as much as it is that it's just a better alternative to where they are. And I don't know the answer to that. That would be interesting to have that discussion. So maybe we'll do that in the future.
It's just pointing out to me, like, for sure, Toronto and Vancouver is probably only going to get crazier. And they're only going to become these bigger cities with more international people coming. And total side note of this, one of my team members just got back from a vacation to Europe. And this is the one story that sticks with me from what she said. She said, I went and I was on vacation. So I went to a restaurant and I was like, we're going to have a good time tonight. And she went to order a drink. And now she's in Paris. So it's expensive. It's expensive. And they're on the euro. So she went to order let's call this she said a double vodka with absolute vodka with like soda and cranberry or something, right? Like
everyone on the Karrasch Real Properties team orders doubles.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, for sure. Yes. It's actually it's like, how do you order your drink? That's on the interview process. So she's ordering a double vodka highball, let's call it.
Okay.
Let's play the game, Tom Storey. What do you think that costs?
In euros?
Okay, so this was also a learning experience for me because I had to learn the I'll tell you what the conversion is. Let's do it in euros.
Okay. I'm thinking 18 euros for that drink.
18 euros. Okay.
Which would be what, $25, $26?
The actual price of that drink was 29 euros.
Holy.
Which converted into Canadian is $46. Vancouver is too expensive. If you charged me $46 for a double drink in Vancouver, I would throw it back in your face.
But do you think she was in like a tourist area of Paris? This isn't the will cost. They knew it's the tourists that come in here. We're going to charge them up the wazoo.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's do your calculation here live. So you said 18
bucks or 18 euros.
I think it's 1.46 was the calculation. So 18 times 1.46. You had it at $26 and it was $46. It was 43 and change.
Crazy.
So in a high-end area in Vancouver, I would expect a highball, like a double highball, to be like $18. Right? In Surrey, out here in the Badlands, where we get the everything for cheap because we're the poors, like $14 is her regular kind of drink. So I don't know, man.
I haven't really been out in Toronto to like the bar scene in many years because I'm lame now and I'm a dad and there's more things that are important to me than that.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what it costs, to be honest with you, but I'm assuming it's like $22 for a drink in Toronto downtown these days.
I would
assume for like a mixed drink, something like that. But still, so that's not even half as much as it cost.
If you're going somewhere super douchey and it's just to be seen, I assume it's going
to cost you a lot.
$26 to $29 a drink, right? And that's for the price of being seen. That's not for the price of the alcohol. She was like, this was at a restaurant, just out for dinner. Now she did admit that it was the very touristy area in Paris.
Okay.
So,
well, it could get worse in Paris because the Olympics are coming to Paris, the Summer Olympics. Those drinks are going to be $100 during the Olympics.
Isn't European inflation still at like 10 and 12%?
I do see those charts once in a while that Canada and U.S. inflation is actually looking pretty darn good on a world scale.
Yeah.
It's really bad in some other countries. Really, really bad.
What did you find when you went to Scotland?
That whole trip was like paid for by the company.
No, but they didn't buy you drinks, did they?
They bought some of our drinks, not all of our drinks, but some.
Okay.
No, those were like $20. Yeah, they were expensive.
Yeah. So
before the exchange rate, they were $20 in local currency. So, yeah.
In like pound sterling. Have they gone back to the pound sterling? Is that what they're on? I don't even know what they're
Honestly, I use my Visa for everything, so I don't even know. But I don't take cash on those trips anymore. It's just dangerous. I'd rather
Speaking about using your Visa, last week's episode, hey?
Crazy that visas and failed businesses. And you know what's interesting is I had done a video talking about like the myths about buying real estate. And there was even like a few years ago, Gary Vee, for anyone that watches his stuff, went on a rant on like, I would never tell any entrepreneur to buy a house if they have savings. I would put all that savings into building the business they actually care about, figure it out, get that all sorted out, rent or live with your parents or have a roommate during that time, and then go deal with the house after you become a success. Which is like, I actually agree with that advice for a lot of people because it's like they're putting their goals down just to buy the house because they said they were supposed to.
Yeah.
But then Randy kind of taught us that most people that start businesses fail. And it seems to be the number one reason why people go bankrupt is the business goes bankrupt. They're personally guaranteeing, 40% of that. Then they get to the credit cards. And that was very eye-opening. And it seemed to me that real estate was the solution for many. And it only seemed to be the problem, at least recently, what he's dealt with for the people that bought new construction.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't have to deal with the mortgage right now. It's in 3 years, and we've been yelling at people about that for a while. It seems like the people that bought pre-con are the ones in trouble.
Seems to be the bailout, right? Like their homes, as long as they've been paying their mortgage, so many people have failed. So we do want business. We want people investing in business, but do we? Because maybe those people are going to be failures more often than they're not. And just going to work every day for a lot of people paying your mortgage is going to be the better. For most people, that's going to be the better thing.
Just statistically, it's going to be the best option for most people. But I think there's also a lot of people that would fail multiple times and then strike gold on an idea. Mm-hmm. And if they had just given up, that would have been a bit of a shame. Do you watch the show The Bear? Have you ever seen that?
No.
You should. It's great. Anyways, I'm not gonna bore the listeners with it, but no, it's on Disney actually in Canada. So if you still have your Disney Plus and you haven't canceled it yet, watch The Bear. It's about a restaurant. And in season 2, they're redoing the restaurant, and one of the main characters is talking with her dad, and he's basically like, "Are you sure? Most of these restaurants fail."
Yeah.
So just interesting. Steve, I got something I want to bring up that I think is something that I can't believe actually me, you, or anybody hasn't made a video on yet. But somebody commented and they said, "Hey, Tom, what would the real estate prices have been in Toronto based on the projections if the pandi never happened?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." So here's what I did. I went back, and the last 10 years of data was extreme price growth, so I didn't use that. I used the 40 years, and I used the 40 years without a major crash. Without the last 3, yes. Okay. So I used the 40-year average with a major crash and 3 corrections in that time frame, and then all the good years, obviously. And it gave me like 6.5% yearly growth compounding on the prices every year. But I was like, let's just be conservative on this, and let's say 5% would have been what would have continued to happen if the pandemic never happened. And as of us recording this podcast, the average sale price for a property in the GTA, so not just the city of Toronto, but surrounding areas, was just under $1.2 million. And my math said that if the pandy never happened, the average sale price would have been $950,000. So about $250,000 less than it is today. If we were on the moderate growth, even with low inventory, I don't know if Canada's immigration was going to be what it was going to be if we didn't go through that. I don't think so, right? And we wouldn't have had those ups and downs, and inflation would have been under control.
Maybe inflation.
Yeah,
inflation probably would have been under control. I just think about the things that probably would have happened. So first of all, people don't remember that 2019 was actually a downward year in prices.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, that's when we saw the uptick again. So I think there would have been definitely a re-rise in prices. But let's pretend in our minds what would have happened. I think in the last 2 years, maybe not the first year, but the last 2 years, I think we're starting to see a lot of people retire early. Right? So I think we have a lot of people that are government workers 55 plus that probably would have worked till 60 or 65, but they qualify for their 30-year pension, like 30 years of work service, whatever, at 55. So they just go, you know what? This was work from home or whatever anyway. So I think you had a lot of people retire early, which is putting a lot of stress on the workforce.
And that's causing our immigration numbers.
And that's causing like, hey, we need more people in here. Now, do those people want to, like, what is short right now? CRA is short. BC Ferries here is a big one right now. Like they're canceling sailings because of things like they can't get parts for the boats and they can't get people to staff it.
Well, talk about, have you taken a flight recently?
I would assume that's the same thing.
Well, the flight I took over to you, you know, the actual reason it was delayed, I got an email saying it was a servicing issue, but then they told us at the front that it was a catering issue. The people didn't show up for the catering to put the food on the plane. And that's what delayed it an hour.
You're like, I just won't have food for it. Can we go?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care. Let's get out of here. I'm good. I'm just going to take a nap.
Crazy. No, I assume that's happening all over. So that's one effect. You wouldn't have had the cheap money. But what was like the interest rate in 2018, beginning of 2019, notched up a quarter point 3 times, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then we would have seen prices take off, but we would not have seen the prices go or the interest rates come down. So it would not have increased nearly as fast. There's no chance.
Not anywhere close. Like I really believe, even if I use more aggressive numbers, we're probably $200,000 more expensive today on average sale price than we would have been if that little thing didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That little thing. And that little demonetization thing. Don't say it.
And when I'm not going to say it. And when you look at, how everything else has gone, okay, the prices are $200,000 more than they would have been, and interest rates are probably 2 to 3% higher than they would have been if the world just happened, right? And we didn't go through all the money coming out and and the inflation, and now what we're going through with the increasing in rate hikes. And you know what else is even worse? Not just that the sale prices are much higher than they would have been, and this is including, by the way, the big down that we had when it dropped in 2022 from the peak. Mm-hmm. That's just going into my numbers of what today's market value is. The rental prices are insane.
Yeah, they're nuts.
Like the renters just got the worst part of all of this. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, great, fine, rates are going up. That means the prices will come down. I'll get into the market. But then The stress test is 2 points higher. They're being stressed at 8.5% right now. They can't afford it, so they continue to rent. And then we're bringing 1 million people into the country every year. And actually, it could be a fun little discussion here. Nolan just did that video on the Zoocasa report of
which I
how
disagree
immigration's actually, I know.
I only watched 3/4 of it, Nolan. I apologize. I disagreed with the first 3/4.
Well, I think you disagree with it because you're seeing firsthand who the people are reaching out to you and where they're coming from. And a lot of them are people newly immigrating here.
So is that a result of just me meeting so many people off of YouTube that don't know people here yet that normally wouldn't have come to my business? Or is it a result of Nolan and people in his area are only seeing people fleeing Toronto and Vancouver come to their area and they're not really seeing a lot of the new to Canada people?
I think the answer is both.
Yeah.
I think the answer is both. I think if you're in Calgary or Edmonton, you've seen all the people come from BC or Ontario, right? So that's who you think is driving up the prices, which is probably the truth.
Yeah.
And then if you're in your market or my market, we get a lot more people that are immigrating coming here because like we talked about earlier in the episode, this was their goal all along to come to one of these two markets. Usually.
I just pulled up through the powers of the internets the Bank of Canada overnight rate so we can remember historically. So this is starting in 08. I'm assuming this is when the 08 crash kind of happened. They were at 4.25 in 08. Then through a series of slashes down into 09, they went to the pandemic levels. So they went to 0.25. In 2010, they went up quickly to 1%, and they held at 1% until the end of 2014. Then they actually dropped to 0.5%. So they went to 0.5% from halfway through 2015 through halfway through 2017, so a 2-year period.
Yep.
And then halfway through 2017, they went up twice. So this is the beginning of 2018, they are at 1%. Then in 2018, they went up once, 2, 3 more times. We ended 2018 at 1.75% overnight lending rate. And then that carried through all the way through to 2020, and where they were dropped back down to financial crisis levels.
So by 2025, 2026, if history is going to teach us anything, where the rates are at today, where do you think they'll be? 3 for the overnight rate? 3.5?
We're at
5.
I would really love the overnight rate to stay above.
No, not what Steve would really love. What do you think is actually going to happen?
I believe historically, let's see if I can find it here on the internet. I believe historically the number is 4.5%. Like if you go back
just the last
100 years,
right?
I believe historically the number is 4.5%. Because these are all too recent. But I did at one point find a chart that went back to like 1912 or something. And there was decades where it was 4.5%. Right? They just stayed there.
Right.
And then there was like,
but did we have a housing shortage then?
I mean, you had a housing shortage after the war because immigration was crazy at that point. But that's the other thing, right? Like the percentage, I think that's what and I apologize, Nolan, for not watching the whole video, but I think that was the thing where it was like talking about percentage of people coming in versus current population. And it's like, yeah, that kind of works, but also 500,000 people plus another 500,000, it's 1 million people. It's just things like you can't obviously build housing, but you can't now support that many people in the hospital system. You can't support that many people in the education system. It's just a lot, right? It's a lot.
How's the foreign buyer tax working out? It's doing its thing.
What do you need a foreign buyer tax for? What do you need a foreign buyer tax for when there's more people coming in now with PRs that can just buy legally? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, what do you need it to get some votes? That's what you need it for. That's what it was brought in for. And by the way, both sides, conservatives and liberals, both had that as part of their plan before the last election.
Yeah.
So
because that just helps people that are here, though. Like it also is like an uneducated point of view, right? It's just like, oh, you can blame those foreigners. They do a really good job of that in Australia as well, right?
New Zealand, I think, is the same.
Yeah, they just, it's everybody else is the problem. Even though I'm a family of immigrants, you're a family of immigrants. It's all really kind of stupid. They don't have a solution. The only problem is right now, obviously the government spending makes it worse. And then an irresponsible amount of people coming in also makes it, right? It doesn't make it better. The trouble is, if we don't have that many people coming in, we then have all sorts of other issues. Not being able to fund pensions and different things like that.
The government has an impossible task. Like, I know, we make jokes and whatever. I don't think me or you in that position does something that solves the problem. I don't really go in there with everything surrounding politics and actually do anything that's going to solve this. Is this not just what, and this will maybe be decisive in the comments, this is what Canada is now? It's expensive to live here.
You said decisive again. Divisive.
I said, can it not be decisive too? Hold on.
Decision making. Yes. Divisive means going to have two opinions. Yeah.
All right. Well, whatever the word is.
The correct.
Is this not just Canada now? Is this it's expensive to live here? We have to have high levels of immigration based on our aging population of the boomers. And we better start building because it's not getting better.
But isn't it a more fundamental question than that? Isn't it stop, like, the government smaller, please? Specifically federal government. Like, I don't mind local government being a little bigger because you should be doing things at a local level is what I find. But federal government a lot smaller. And really, I think our society is in a position right now where we look for things from the government to get free things. And what you have to remember when you're dealing with the government is the government has no money. All the government does is take money from the citizens and redisperse it. That's all they do. So they have $0. So every time they say we're giving money, all they're doing is stealing different portions of different people's money. That's what taxation is, right? It's it's government theft. It totally is.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's forced, right? If you don't pay it, you go to jail.
Then leave. Yeah.
Right. And
Canada, hey, people didn't like that I told you to leave Canada a few episodes ago.
I mean, it was a good thought. But really, so here's where my thought goes with that is there's an old, I don't know if you call it, what do you call it? A fable, an old wise tale, old whatever of teach a man to fish or give a man a fish, right? And right now we are full of giving away free fish and nobody knows how to fish. Nobody knows how to take care of themselves. I taught one of my daughters this lesson the other day. She asked me to make her French toast. And I was like, you know what? You're old enough to make your own French toast. And she's like, I don't know how to make it. And I said, cool. I can give you French toast now, or we can spend the next 20 minutes showing you how to make French toast. So I showed her how to make French toast. The next 4 days straight, she made French toast for herself before I woke up. And it was like, oh, look at this. You now have learned something. And that's where our society needs to get to. They need to learn how to take care of themselves and stop turning to big papa government to wipe their bums and take care of them, because it's not going to happen. Like, you got to be adults. And unfortunately, our society is in a spot right now where they think, for instance, they're against big corporations, things like that. Guess who the biggest corporation is?
The government?
Government, except they don't have to provide value to get their money, right? Private companies have to provide value to stay in business. The government does not.
Yeah, we're a shareholder of the government, but they don't have to hit their targets. Well, I guess technically then we vote them out,
but not really.
Well, you vote. Well, you have a voice.
Here's the thing:
who you want.
How about this? How about if you don't do the things you're going to say you're going to do in a certain amount of time, your term is over and you're out? How about that? Like, that might be a better system. How about all these governments that were like, hey, we're going to do government reform? Maybe that was JT's big thing. We're going to do government reform for elections. That's all gone now. Why? Because the coalition's in and he gets to stay in power for 10 years, right? So I don't know. I'm going down the conspiracy theory side of things here where it's all crazy and all nuts. But realistically, anybody that's voting for free anything, just remember, all you're doing is adding to inflation. That's all you're doing. So if you are technically on the bottom end, let's say you are middle income or lower, and you're voting for government spending and free things from the government because they're coming from the rich people, you're the one that's going to get hurt worse than the rich people, because the rich people can handle inflation, and you, as somebody that's lower on the income scale, cannot handle inflation. You're screwing yourself.
I also think that as a citizen of Canada, if I'm looking at the government to solve all my problems, my life is just going to be massive amounts of disappointment at all time. Yeah. Who cares who's in charge? Do what you want to do. Do what makes you happy. Live your life. You know, like, build the business you want. If you're waiting for this to happen or your day's better because this happens, you know, obviously the government has impact. That's clear.
Yeah.
Huge impact. We get to say what we feel. We get to do what we want to do. Yeah, we pay high taxes. You know, I'm okay with it. I like this country. I do. I know you're not as much on board as I am. You know, but
if I thought our money got us what we paid for in taxes, I hate the thing where they say you're not paying your fair share, because if you look at somebody who is, let's say for instance, somebody who has a $500,000 a year salary. Mm-hmm. That person, if they have a $500,000 a year salary, they are a CEO, they are a high-end executive. They're paying $265,000 a year in income tax. And then they get told they're not paying their fair share. It's BS, right? So I understand the person making $50,000, $60,000 a year, you know, obviously it's tough, right? It's hard out there. Just because that person, here's what I like to do. I like to say to people when they're talking about, oh, you need to tax the rich. I say to them, if I made $500,000 this year, how much do you think the government should take from me? And they all say at least $100,000. And I go, me too. And they take double, like more than double that. So anyway, I have though a story. This is running really long, Tom. This is nice.
Steve,
catch-ups are nice. I love catch-ups.
Catch-ups are nice. And hopefully my audio and video has been okay, because I have been working on cottage Wi-Fi this whole time. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Soretsky, because I'm doing, if you're watching this on YouTube, I've been doing the Soretsky lean back is what I call it. It's a podcasting technique where you hold the mic like this. It's exhausting, man. My hand is hurting. And this is a tough way to do it. So props to Steve.
Oh,
I just want to say something.
I'm sorry. Hang on. Are you having a tough time at your cottage, Tom Storey?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, I am. Just before you go into this story, I just want to share one thing that Joe Polish had talked about in the event. He said it from the very beginning. He basically said, put up your hand if you're worth $1 million. A few people put their hands up. Put up your hand if you're worth $5 million. Maybe there was one hand up in the room of 800. I don't know. Put up your hand up if you're worth $10 million. Nobody in the room put their hand up. He said, okay, would you like me to give you $1 million right now? Put your hand up. And like the whole room was like, yeah, like give me $1 million. He's like, cool. I'll give you $1 million if I can pluck out your left eyeball. Mm-hmm. And then everyone was like, nah, never mind. He's like, what about for $5 million? I'll give you $5 million, but I want your eye. Nah, no one's interested. I think like one person may have put up their hand as a joke.
Yeah.
And he's like, $10 million, but I get your left leg. Nobody in the room of 800 people. Steve, you were thinking about it. You were considering it.
No, I was wishing my brother's in the room. He took an elective left leg amputation. I was wishing he was in the room because he could have stood up.
Yeah.
True story. Brother's a left leg amputee. Anyway, keep going.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. But the point was, we all have things, our body, our health, our minds that we value at over $1 million, at over $5 million. We wouldn't trade them for money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, watching this somewhere, you don't even have to necessarily be in Canada, but like, you're probably in a pretty decent spot. There are people that would pay anything just to have what you have. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share that, is that I think that's not that we've necessarily been negative today, but I think that's like a nice way of looking at life. Mm-hmm. Man, are we lucky. Man.
I agree.
Like, my God, we are so lucky.
I just wish more people would appreciate that. Right. And I think this is actually going to tie in nicely, because I think that appreciation, one thing that Joe Polish, I think, talked about, I know Jordan Peterson's been on this lately a lot. I've been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson, which is, it's really like, you have to work at gratitude. Gratitude doesn't come quickly, doesn't come easily. And I think there's a lot of people here that I wish they were taught it. Just like the teaching French toast, right? Like, I wish their parents took the time out. So this is going to tie in perfectly, because I did the live stream and some people had some like saving, like first time home buyer saving tips and things, like questions like that. And I've been saving this for a long time, because I wanted to go over this, because this is something my parents did for me, and I've now just done it with my kids, and I think it's a good lesson. It's the reason why I think I'm conservative with finances, and it's worked out really well. So I have we had this big piggy bank in our house, like a big 4-foot tall Coke bottle. And I told my girls, you fill, every time you have a quarter or something, you put it in there, and that's our Disneyland fund, right? When that thing gets to the top, Disneyland fund. So, since they've been like 2 years old, they're just throwing quarters in whenever they can. And this thing's like, it's a big bottle, so it's not really filling up much. But then I was like, you know what? They're about the right age when my parents took me to the bank for the first time. So I was looking at the interest rates, and I'm like, if we take this money that's in this thing and I can start teaching them about compound interest. GICs are 4.5%, 4.65%.
4.5%. They're pretty good right now. Yep.
Yeah. So we empty out this bottle. You want to have a good time with your kids at some point in time? Rolling quarters, rolling loonies. They had a blast, by the way. What are you going to say?
Can I just say something really quick?
Yeah.
When you said they're getting to the age, I thought you were going to say they're getting to the age where it makes sense to take them to Disney, but you said take them to the bank. So was your
first
position to them this time, hey, girls, we can fly to Disney now, or we can go to the bank and we can put all this money in a GIC.
Well, this all ties in. Good question.
We'll go to Disney 3 times.
Good question. No, they're not quite there yet. I need a couple more years. But basically, I was sitting there, and they each had money in their in their piggy banks, and my oldest daughter had quite a bit of money in her piggy bank. And so I was like, you know what, guys, we can put this. They had enough to lock in at the minimum GICs, which were like $500. So, they each have some substantial money that they've been collecting. And I sat down with my girls, and I just told them, I was like, listen, here's what's going to happen. We can keep this money here, but it's not going to do anything. We just have to save it. And that's good. That's the first step. But if we take it to the bank, when you put money in the bank, that money grows. And they're like, oh, okay, that's weird. Okay. So I said, here's what you're going to. So we rolled all the quarters. We did all that stuff. We emptied out their piggy banks. We went to the bank. Now the bank, shout out Cloverdale Coast Capital Savings. We went to the bank, and the lady was great. She helped. She counted the bills with them. She was talking to them about money. She was doing all these things. Side note, because they're under 18, they're like, don't worry about bringing their SIN numbers. We needed their SIN numbers, didn't have them. But they were awesome. And so I explained to my daughters, and so did the lady at the bank, that you take the money you put it in the bank, you guarantee that you're going to leave it in the bank for a certain amount of time. And then what your bank does is that bank lends that money to other people who then, when they, for the privilege of borrowing that money, they pay back a little extra. And then the bank takes some of that extra and you take some of that extra. So in other words, if you put the money in the bank and let other people use it, then you can grow your money. If you leave it at home, it's not going to grow. And so my kids are like, this is cool. Like, they're actually into it. They're not bouncing around. They're watching the lady count out the money. They helped them do the thing. They did the little receipts, like the handwritten, like this is how much is in your account. And so all good. So we walk out and we're done our appointment. And my youngest turns to me and goes, now she's 6. She goes, Dad, I only have one question. Okay, what's that? What happens if the people don't pay the money back to the bank? And I was just like, first of all, amazing question. That's not this time. We're not having that conversation right now. I'm going to explain to you insurance and different things in the future. But I appreciate where you're. So here's the thing. At 6 years old now, she understands where she's putting her money in the bank and how it all works. And now they're interested in putting in the money in the bank. So what I did is we celebrated that by going to the bank and doing all of that step. We took them to A&W. I broke my diet. We took them to A&W and had burgers and everything. And then what we did is we put them on an allowance program. So if you have young children right now at about 4, 5, 6 years old, this is the spot to do it. We give them $5 a week on Friday. But there's a rule with it. What's your question, Tom Storey? You're good at. Okay.
No, I mean, I think it's a valid question she asked because what we've learned recently is I think Canadian bank accounts are only insured up to 150 grand.
I don't think we're there yet with her.
If they don't pay back the money and we're collapsing here, it might be better under the mattress.
Like
but
that was her first thing. She's like, what is somebody else? So anyway, we got past that. I said, don't worry about that yet. We'll talk about that in the future. So we put them on this allowance program. So it's $5 a week. So on Friday, payday, we're going to give you $5. And they're like, so now they're like doing all their chores. If you don't do your chores, right? One of my daughters has not been brushing her teeth as often as she should. And I'm like, every day you come downstairs without your teeth brushed is $1 off your allowance. So if you don't do it for 7 days straight, you owe me $2, right? So anyway, they're figuring all that out. So $5, but that's a $5 bill. On the second week, we gather around the computer together and we transfer $5 into their bank account.
Smart. So
they have to save half of their money. So they get $40 a month, 20 of it or whatever. Is that right? No, that's $20 a month, $40 for 2 kids. So now they have the money in their hand and they're saving half of it.
I think there's also something to be said about the next generation, and I'm including myself in this because money to me is digital numbers in my bank account. Mm-hmm. I rarely carry cash ever. Yep. When I was a kid, I had not that it was much cash, but I had cash and I could see it and be like, oh wow, like, this is now everything just is digital numbers in an account, and it's not that I become unsensitive to it, but it's different.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for the next generation of kids to understand what this is if they can't physically look at it and feel it and touch it, because we're going paperless. A lot of it is.
But that is, again, this comes down to the parents' fault not teaching their children, right? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to teach them that. But when it was my parents, what had to happen is they would give us the $5 and then we would go to the bank and put it in every second week. So we'd get to spend one and get to, the other one. But this time is like, okay, I want to get them used to online banking. So it's like everybody gather around on Friday. We're going to log into the bank account. You're going to see me from my bank account transfer $5 to your bank account. We do that every single week for both of them. And then here's where, so my oldest says, well, I'm going to start saving because we're going on vacation next week. Right. So she's like, I'm going to start saving all these $5 up. So she ends up with like $25 in her purse. and she's going to spend it on vacation. But then she ran into another lesson, which is I let her go to the corner store with some of the neighborhood kids, and she had like $25 in her purse. And so she didn't just get the Slurpee that she wanted. She ended up buying some other stuff. And like, she came back and I was like, you spent money on what? And then I had to stop myself because I was like, wait a minute, this is her spending money side. She can spend it on whatever the hell she wants because she's understanding the rest of it's going to savings. So I had to stop myself from the fact that she bought a pack of stickers for $5 from the corner store. Right. But hey, you got to enjoy life a little bit too.
I thought you were going to say that she bought things for her friends, which would have been very sweet.
Yeah, it would have been sweet, but no. No.
Hey, when did we turn into a financial podcast? I thought this was a real estate show, Steve.
I think this is supposed to be a real estate show, but I don't know.
By the way, all the advice, including giving your kids allowance, is not financial advice. Talk to your advisor. It's just what Steve's doing in his life. Okay.
I think it is your responsibility as a parent to set your children up for success. So teach them how to make French toast and save for their future. If you don't, honestly though, like, sorry, this is the overall freaking point of this story. Oh, just in time to wrap here for the hour.
He veered off. He saw a squirrel and he's back.
We're sitting there, told them about their allowance, did the whole thing. And my wife chimes in and says, girls, now I want you to know that you've learned more about money today than most people learn from like when they graduate high school.
It's true.
And I was like, whatever, like it's not true. And so then I was starting to talk to some people and I was, we get to the office. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? And I told them, to the story and whatever. And to a T, I told that story probably 5 times. And everybody's like, my parents never did that with me. My parents never took me to the bank. They didn't give me a regular allowance. They didn't teach me how to save my allowance. They didn't do any. And then I realized, like, holy crap, I was very lucky that my parents took me and showed me these things. And now I'm a saver. Like, I'm a 50% of my income saver. And most people aren't.
I had an allowance, but the saving aspect wasn't there. It was just I knew I was getting money. Yeah. Once a week, also, but my grandpa actually made it competitive with me. I was a hockey goalie growing up, played fairly competitive, obviously didn't really go anywhere with it, but decent levels. And every game was worth $5. Okay. Every game I played in that was worth $5. And this was just me being competitive with myself. Every goal I let in as the goalie, $1 came off. Okay. So if I let in 1 goal, I made $4 that game. If I let in 5 goals, I made nothing. Right? Rarely did I let in more than 5 goals. I was reasonably.
I was going to say, how much did you owe your grandpa by the end of the season?
It didn't go negative. But if you got a shutout, it doubled. You made $10 for that game. So I knew going in, I was competitive with myself. And then what we would do is at the end of the season, I'd go over to his house. We'd sit down. And we'd go through each game and go through the scores, and then we'd add it all up and show him what he owed me. And I know this sounds funny, but like as a competitive person, I don't know if it was so much about the money as it was just about proving to my grandpa I was good at a sport.
Yeah,
I loved it. It was like a huge thing for me as a kid. So I don't know if that's the
when you
same,
start saving money. Like I had someone say this to me, like what's the point of saving money just so you can have a bigger number on the screen? I'm like, yeah. Like literally, like I check my bank account. I check my bank accounts every single day. And there are some people that don't pay their bills more than once a year, right? With bad credit and everything else. Like you gotta stay on top of that stuff. And I think we make so many excuses for, and I know, trust me, it's not falling on deaf ears here with like how expensive homes are and all that stuff. I just know where people are spending their money. And I can see that people aren't making wise decisions. And I think it's because they were never taught to. And they don't know how bad of decisions every single day that they're making with their finances, right? So what we did with that money when it was us is my parents made me buy at the end of the year a Canada savings bond every single year. And with all the extra money that was saved up. And then at that time, there were like 7% interest rates. I bought my first car before I had my driver's license. At 15 and a half, I bought my first vehicle. And I didn't get my driver's license till 16, right? So you can teach people how to be responsible with money, and I think we're so friggin' bad at it.
Let's wrap this up, Steve.
Let's wrap this up because I've been yapping.
Unless you're going to become a financial YouTuber and offer courses or become the next Dave Ramsey, I think everything you talked about today's episode was actually really good advice. And when my little guy's old enough to understand that, I'm excited to do that with him. Mm-hmm. But for the people listening or watching that are like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't know where to start. You just learned it from your parents. I'm sure your parents learned it from their parents. It is just a generational thing, or can you go out and learn this elsewhere? Like, where would you go to learn this? I know it's simple, what we talked about today, but if you're starting from zero.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey basically is the guy.
Well, I mean, here's one thing I did I had a friend of mine that wanted to buy a house very early on in my career. And he was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a budget. And we sat and we did a budget of all of his expenses. And then I asked him for his bank statements, and we went through his bank statements and we put it against the budget. And now this was, let's call it 12 years ago. But when we did this, and it was his goal to buy a house, and he bought a house within 2.5 years of doing this. So we went through everything, and we found that he could not explain to me, not just spending, but he could not explain to me where $350 a month was going. Like literally cash spending ATM.
I have an idea where it went.
Well, I have no idea where it went, and I don't know what joke you're going to make, but I'm saying as soon as we had identified that, he was able to save an extra $350 a month on top of what he was already saving. So it's possible. Where'd it go?
This was a great episode.
Was it drinks in Paris?
Yeah, it was going to be drugs, buying weed, probably.
No,
the answer. No, I'm not saying for him specifically, but
it's not.
If you magically don't know where your money went and you don't want to tell someone else, it's probably because it's you're either hard into gambling or you're buying drugs.
I think it was Tim Hortons and tacos. Who knows what?
Because you remember back in the day, Tim Hortons, you couldn't use a Visa card at Tim Hortons until like 5 years ago. Yeah. It was debit or cash.
Yeah, that's probably true, actually. I bet you he was laborer spending 300, like 3 coffees a day at Tim Hortons while you're some sort of mechanic or something. That's pretty common.
Steve, this was fun. I am boiling in here. It must be 35 degrees in this box in which I'm recording in today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for watching. I love these catch-up episodes, and I learned a lot from Uncle Steve today on finances and what I should do moving forward with my kid. Steve, you want to wrap it up with some final thoughts as these flies are all over me now?
No, I just want you to get a jar, put Disneyland Fund on it, and every time there's a quarter, trust me, your son is at the right age where he's going to think it's fun. Just like, bing. And you give him, like every day when you get home, you have maybe those quarters in your car console or whatever. You give him a quarter, bing. Trust me, that's where it starts.
Can I give you one piece of advice? Surprise your kids with a trip to Disneyland, regardless of what they do with their savings, because life is still short and you should have fun and be responsible with your money. So take your kids to Disney.
Yeah, that's the plan at some point, but don't go into debt to do it.
No, not at. Of course, don't go into debt to do it, but
most people go into debt to do it, Tom Storey. Most people put
I'm not saying most people. I'm talking to you right now. I know you could afford to take your kids to Disneyland. Go have a fun vacation and don't worry about it for once. You know, your mortgage will still be there to be paid off when you get home. Okay?
All right. Thanks.
Not financial advice. Just for Steve. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening another episode. These ones are always a lot of fun. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And like this video if you haven't already. And if you're on the audio platforms, make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We will see you next week. Bye.